As we will soon depart 2020, the GAWU, as has now become an annual tradition, takes this opportunity to reflect on the year that has gone, that is nearing an end. 2020 was indeed history-making on several fronts, and one that mankind will not soon forget. The events this year reminded us how dependent we are on one another. It showed us that despite all our advancements, how easily life can be halted and turned upside down, but it demonstrated to us that despite adversity and challenges, our collective actions can surmount the obstacles that are put in our way. As we consider 2020, we remember our union's late president, Comrade Komal Chan, a champion of the working class. Comrade Komal, who passed away earlier this year, served the GAWU with dedication, commitment, and selflessness. Outside of GAWU, he served as vice president of the Federation of Independent Trade Unions of Guyana, FITU, and as a member of the Presidential Council of the World Federation of Trade Unions, WFTU. His commitment to the advancement of the working class was unwavering and is a testament to the ideals he subscribed to during his lifetime. Comrade Komal stood tall in the battles in defense of the workers, and he earned the respect and admiration of those around him. His contributions will forever be remembered, and his legacy and teachings will live on. We also at this time remember another dear comrade of GAWU, Feroz Mohammed, who also passed away earlier this year. Comrade Feroz, during his lifetime, though not an active trade unionist, always stood in defense of the workers. He espoused working class ideals and recognized the need for unity among the ranks of the working class. Comrade Feroz was always willing to lend his support and ideas to the struggles of the workers. Probably his most tangible contribution regarded workers' education. Much of his lessons on various topics continue to be used unto now, demonstrating the depth and breadth of his knowledge. In more recent years, Comrade Feroz became even closer to the GAWU and continued to share his time and views as workers struggled for betterment reach high points. Indeed, like Comrade Komal, Comrade Feroz will be missed. We use this opportunity to remember too other stalwarts and activists of GAWU who passed on during the year. We recognize their many and varied contributions to the struggles of the working class and the realization of several achievements. As 2020 reaches a hopeful conclusion, we recognize many challenges still face the working people of Guyana. We recognize that too many of our working men and women are still finding difficulty to feed their family, to put a shelter over their head, to send their children to school, and all in all, live happy and contented lives. This is the nightmare that faces many people in this Yuletide season. We recognize too there has been recently proactive efforts to help alleviate their plight and to reduce the burdens that were placed on their backs over the last 5 years. This is welcoming, and we look forward to further relief measures in 2021. The sugar industry. As a union which draws a large contingent of its membership from the sugar industry, our reflection cannot fail to include this important economic activity. The industry, despite its trial and travails, remains pivotal and is a source of well-being for tens of thousands of Guyanese. It is to this day the nation's single largest employer and a beacon of hope for scores of communities. Indeed, the industry's contribution is monumental, and its sustenance is a matter that cannot be treated lightly. It was therefore for the GAWU most disheartening to recognize the treatment meted out to the industry and its stakeholders over the last 5 years. The industry, though a child of the state, was treated worse than a stepchild, pushed into the coal and left to fend with scraps and bits thrown from the table. This was the disgraceful attitude of those who had to be ejected from the seat of government. The industry was reduced to groveling while the former powers that be stepped on it, seeking to strip it of its prized assets. They said they wanted the industry to thrive, but starve it of necessary inputs to ensure its success. We of the GAWU steadfastly hold that it was a deliberate and calculated attempt to slow poison the industry to death. As history has shown us time and time again, the wicked never succeed and the oppressors are always conquered. Though it could not come soon enough, as was famously said, even the longest night has an end. Indeed, the night has ended, and the rays of sun have begun to shine brilliantly. Today, we see serious and aggressive attempts are being made to breathe new life back into the industry. The GAWU sees many opportunities for the industry's success and viability, and we recognize the active attempt to solicit the necessary investment to further these options and to bring the industry to where it really belongs, thriving and succeeding for Guyana and Guyanese. Sugar production as of December 13, 2020, stood at 87,875 tons sugar, with sugar production at the respective estates as follows: Albion 41,710 tons, Blaymont 27,415 tons, and Iflot 18,750 tons. This year's production will be all likelihood eclipse 2019 production as the worst production in Gaisuku's history. Our union a few weeks ago had warned of this possibility when we had considered the data we had received at that time. As we pointed out then and reiterated again, output hardly surprises us. We say this cognizant of the terrible mismanagement that plagued the industry over the last few years. Not too long ago, the union had cause to publicly disclose that canes adjacent to the residence of the Blaymont estate manager was overrun by bushes and weeds. We had cause then, as we do again, to sound an alarm as we have to wonder what would be the state of canes that are out of the eyesight of the manager. This situation is rather not the exception, but too often the norm. This is simply disappointing and a serious cause for concern. The 2020 production demonstrates the enormity of tasks that are before the new board and management of the corporation. We have seen recently the Gaisuku announcing that it anticipates to realize 97,000 tons sugar next year. While it is an improvement from the disaster of 2020, we are hopeful that the target can not only be realized but surpassed, though it is hardly a production to be ecstatic about. The industry has much greater potential, and there is urgent need to grasp with the challenges to bring about the desired results. These are matters we will continue to eagerly follow and, when necessary, offer our comments. We have seen the disaster of estates closure, and we need not nor want that again. reopening of the estates, the end of a long nightmare. True to its promise, one of the first actions of the new PPPC administration was to live up to its commitment to reopen the closed Skeldon, Rosehall, and East Demerara estate. It is a noble attempt to reverse what was considered the largest retrenchment exercise in post-independence Guyana, and a concerted effort to erase that dark blot in our history. Already several hundreds of workers have been re-engaged, and many more are expected to become employed over the coming months. The dark clouds that have hovered over those estates since 2017 have dissipated, and there is now a renewed sense of optimism. For many workers and their families, they have begun to piece their lives back together, though for some, life may never go back to what it once was. That is indeed a sad reminder of how heartless were the previous bunch who paraded along the corridors of power. They sat perched high atop their ivory towers, playing masters of all as they sought, irrespective of the social and economic costs, to destroy the sugar industry and its wake, uprooting the lives of thousands of ordinary Guyanese. As a socio-economic study that expectedly will soon be released has found, the impact has been nothing short of devastating. Now, many workers are anxiously awaiting re-employment and have enlisted their names for consideration. The massive response by the workers indicates how important the estates were to them and tells us that there was simply no alternative to provide adequate remunerative employment. While heartened by that development, we could not help but to be distressed by what was found when the rusted padlocks and the gates of the estates were finally opened. Our union a few weeks ago had a chance to visit the now reopened estates and was most distressed when we walked through the forming, teeming estates. We saw expensive, yes comrades, very expensive pieces of equipment just allowed to deteriorate in the weather. We saw what appeared to be pieces of machinery chopped up. In some instances, important components were just stripped. Our union in 2019 had pointed out that estates' assets were being disposed, and the proof is in the pudding. Those who are entrusted to safeguard the Guyanese people's assets should be made to account for their stewardship. At this time, we understand the Herculean efforts are being furthered to bring the closed estates back to life. Indeed, serious and dedicated efforts are required to rehabilitate the fields, clear the clogged drainage canals, repair the abundant infrastructure, and thoroughly service the factories. We know of the skill, knowledge, and commitment of the sugar workers and are confident that those estates will roar back to life. It is most vexatious, therefore, to see commentaries and statements emanating from some leading members of the political opposition. We have seen them using all manners of phrases and terms to denounce the government's support to the sugar industry. We notice too what we consider the violent derogatory expressions to describe the sugar industry. Inasmuch as we are disturbed, we cannot say we are surprised. The bile that has emanated from those quarters, inasmuch as it is disappointing, it is not unexpected. We have seen up close the venom they have for the sugar workers and the industry. We have witnessed firsthand the hardships they inflicted, and the punishment they meted out while holding the reins of government. And we know all too well of their desire to rid Guyana of the sugar industry, and they seek to satisfy narrow political motives while ignoring the well-being of the nation and its people. Indeed, it was that pea-brained logic that found the ship of state in rough waters, the foreign reserves disappearing, gold reserves vanishing, and the country in heavy overdraft. Wage increase for sugar workers. For the first time since 2014, sugar workers have finally received a rise in pay. Earlier this year, the union and the corporation reached an interim agreement which saw sugar workers benefiting from a 5% pay increase from January 1st, 2020. The agreement reached was under the clear position that the negotiations for 2019 still remains outstanding. While GAWU implemented the new rates of pay with effect from May, the workers a few weeks ago received their retroactive payment for the period January to April 2020. The period of wage freeze was most distressing for the workers, as they and their families had to contend with massive rise in the cost of living, while their real and nominal wages plummeted. During the period, several long-standing benefits were suspended by the Sugar Corporation, undoubtedly with the support of the former's power that be. The effect in totality was utterly disturbing and represented a concerted attack on the workers' condition of work. As responsible as that was, the workers saw their colleagues in other sections of the state benefiting from pay increases and other improvements in conditions of work, while theirs regressed. Even former President Forbes Burnham, who had many ill things ascribed to him, never treated sugar workers as his successors did. At this time, GAWU and GAWU remained locked in discussions regarding the outstanding 2019 negotiations and other matters. Our union has indicated to GAWU our desire to find an amicable settlement to the outstanding matters. The corporation, for its part, has listened attentively and has committed to fully studying the matter and will respond to the union. We are hopeful that the matter can soon be resolved favorably and that sugar workers can finally begin to receive some of the justice they deserve. Aquaculture in the industry. The union has recognized a resurgence of calls for the abandonment of the sugar industry and a transition to aquaculture. While the call and those who are making the call certainly are not new to the scene, the GAWU felt we had long thrown this matter in the refuse heap where it really belonged. Nevertheless, we see it continuing to reappear and therefore has to be extinguished when the logical gaps are exposed. The concept of aquaculture is not new or alien to the sugar industry. Similar ventures were pursued in the latter 1970s and early 1980s, when GAWU embarked on several non-sugar ventures. Aquaculture, like all the ventures pursued in that period, had simply disastrous results. Apart from that, they diverted scarce resources and distracted from the core business of sugar. We would want to believe if aquaculture is as lucrative as it is held out to be, then businessmen would be lining up to seize the opportunity. Unfortunately, there are no lines. Transitioning to ethanol. Alongside aquaculture, There has also been some great deal of talk regarding a transition to ethanol in the sugar industry. It has been argued that there exists a significant windfall from such a transition, and this should be pursued with great haste. Parallel to those arguments that glitters of gold, we are knowledgeable of several studies which undermine the arguments that are being made. Those empirical studies have demonstrated that ethanol only becomes viable at a certain point. That point, we might add, is much lower than the current selling price of sugar. It appears to negate the argument. We hold that the industry's pilot ethanol project should be used to prove or disprove the merits of the argument from both sides. We of the GAWU are supportive of measures that would bring about improvement. At the same time, we hold that any initiative must be thoroughly studied and examined to determine the feasibility of such venture in the first place. Doing otherwise, we contend, is akin to putting the cart before the horse. Non-sugar entities. Outside of the sugar industry, our union has also represented workers from several enterprises in other economic sectors. While our relations with those employers generally remain cordial and respectful, and we continue to advance the well-being and welfare of those workers, we would have been very happy to indicate that all was well. At some entities, we have continued to face challenges, and we continue to do our utmost to defend and advance the rights of the workers. Demerara Timbers Limited, disrespecting workers' rights. The foreign-owned Demerara Timbers Limited, DTL, continues to disrespect the rights of its workers and flout the laws of Guyana. For some years now, the company has refused to engage the GAWU in collective bargaining, though it is obligated, in our view, to engage the union. The company's disrespectful attitude extends to the government as well. On more than one occasion, the former Department of Labor invited the company to engagements on matters which it simply refused to attend. The obnoxious attitude of the company is unbecoming and speaks to respect it has for the Guyanese working people. The attitude of the company prompted the GAWU to lodge a formal complaint with the former Trade Union Recognition and Certification Board, headed by retired Justice Claudette LeBennett. The Trade Union Recognition and Certification Board at that time had referred the matter to former Attorney General for prosecution, recognizing the open and closed nature manner of the matter. Dismayingly, weeks and months turned into years, and the then Attorney General, from all indications, dragged his feet on the matter. One wonders whether the then Attorney General attitude was related to the union the complaint emanated from. More recently, the GAWU submitted its complaint to the newly reconstituted Trade Union Recognition and Certification Board, headed by former Labor Minister, Dr. Nanda Gopal. The Trade Union Board wrote the company, emphasizing that it is obligated to engage the GAWU. The company, we are aware, has responded to the Trade Union Recognition and Certification Board, though in our view, in an improper manner. We are hopeful that the board will pursue stronger measures against the company to ensure that it complies with the spirit and letter of the law. Skeldon Energy Inc., disregarding workers' right to union representation. The GAWU in 2019 was certified by the TURCB as the bargaining agent on behalf of the employees employed at Skeldon Energy Inc. Following our certification, the union approached the company with a view to formalizing our relations. To our dismaying surprise, the company, which is a subsidiary of NISIL, refused to engage the GAWU, though the union was certified lawfully to speak on the workers' behalf. The union, recognizing the adamant attitude of SCI to flout the law, approached the Trade Union Recognition and Certification Board to inform it of its unbecoming behavior. Though the board had written the company on the behavior, it refused to comply with the lawful obligations. Our union, through our attorneys at law, also had written the company, which offered a shameless explanation for its action or inaction, as it were. Our union recently drew this matter to the attention of the reconstituted Trade Union Recognition Board, which was most upset on learning of the matter. The board has sent the company a correspondence demanding that it become compliant with the law within a certain time frame. At this time, the company has continued to blatantly flout its legal obligation. We expect the board will take stern action to bring the company to its senses and that the workers' right to union representation would be upheld. Guyana Rice Development Research Station, new to the GAWU fold. The workers of the Guyana Rice Development Board Rice Research Station at Burma are now a part of the GAWU family. The workers overwhelmingly supported the union at a poll organized recently by the Trade Union Recognition and Certification Board. The newest GAWU members became disillusioned with their previous union and approached the GAWU to speak on their behalf. The union subsequently approached the Trade Union Certification Board on their behalf, and a poll was ordered to determine whether the GAWU or the Union of Agricultural and Allied Workers, UAAW, enjoyed the majority support of the workers. During the poll, which saw the participation of nearly the entire workforce, the GAWU secured 60 votes, whereas the UAAW received 16 votes. The workers' message was resoundingly clear. At this time, the GAWU is hopeful to begin engagement soon with the Guyana Rice Development Board to formalize relations and to actively address several matters of concern to the workers. National minimum wage, an urgent need for revision. The GAWU remains concerned that the year-end looms and the improvement of the national minimum wage will still remain unresolved. In April 2019, the National Tripartite Committee, which fields representatives from the government, the trade union movement, and the business community, approved unanimously an increase in the minimum wage from $44,200 to $60,000 per month. Though having a clear mandate, the former government failed to implement the new minimum wage. The GAWU, through the FITUG, continues to champion this matter, recognizing the hardship being borne by many workers and their families. This matter was represented to the new Minister of Labor, the Honorable Joseph Hamilton, soon after his assumption to office. At that time, the minister promised to look into the matter. For the GAWU, it was therefore pleased to learn when the minister indicated recently that he was prepared to approve at last the new minimum wage. However, soon after the minister's announcement, we saw elements of the business community expressing disagreement, though acknowledging that the current minimum wage was inadequate. The business community has sought to shelter under COVID-19 to argue against the implementation of the new minimum wage. We have to wonder which self-respecting business person takes joy in paying their employees just $255 per hour. Certainly, that is more than insufficient, given the expenses of life. Yet the facade of COVID-19 is being raised to deny struggling workers a few dollars more. To know that Guyana is the fastest growing economy in the world, and yet our workers are being paid just over $1 per hour, is utterly shameful. At an inaugural meeting of the reconstituted tripartite committee a few days ago, the business community sought to have the new minimum wage implemented from April of 2021. This was stoutly rejected by the workers' representatives, who contended that already too much time has elapsed. At this time, we in the GAWU calls on Minister Hamilton to implement the decision of a properly convened National Tripartite Committee meeting and without further delay to have the orders issued for $60,000 per month as the new national minimum wage with effect from January 1st, 2021. The NIS, a source of discomfort. As we conclude 2020, there are far too many NIS contributors and pensioners alike who continue to be denied benefits they rightly deserve. In recent times, many have moved to the press and in some instances sought an audience with President Dr. Irfan Ali to have their matters resolved. We believe that contributors, past and present, should not have to take such extraordinary means to have their genuine matters resolved. The fact that this is occurring is indicative of the state of the NIS, and more so how distressed Guyanese have become with this scheme. Our union, for its part, has continued to represent union members and others who seek our assistance. Despite our best efforts, we continue to confront obstacles after obstacles within the scheme. Undoubtedly, in our view, there is a need to do better and ensure the contributors duly benefit from their entitlement. The extractive sector, safeguarding our patrimony. The extractive sector continues to receive seminal attention as the value of our nation's natural resources continue to grow in importance. More recently, we have seen announcements of large gold finds and re-entry of previously departed companies. We see similar interests heating up in the bauxite sector, as well with several new ventures are set up to get underway while exploratory works are continuing. Similar interests we have seen emerge in other areas as well. Of course, the newest star of the sector, oil, cannot go unnoticed. Indeed, we have been relegated with the cavalier dreams of the windfall that await us. And certainly, oil can well bring untold riches, as many countries have demonstrated. But alongside those possibilities, we recognize many probabilities of pitfalls as well. We hold whether it is oil, gold, diamond, bauxite, forestry, or whatever other rich resources our nation is blessed with, our people must come first and foremost. It is our patrimony, and it is incumbent on us all to ensure that future generations benefit from our natural wealth. Of grave concern as well is the employment practices of participants in the sector. Workers continue to complain of their rights being disrespected and certain conditions of work ignored. Worse yet, workers are penalized for the mere talk of organizing themselves in a union. We recognize the role of the state and are encouraged by the statements by the Minister of Labor, who has continued to stand with the workers. For its part, the GAWU has continued to make itself available to workers who believe they have been wrong and require advice and/or representation. We believe this is our civic duty to protect our fellow citizens and to ensure that they are not exploited. The hijacking of our democracy, a sordid affair. 2020, as we said at the commencement, has been history-making for several reasons. Undoubtedly, for us as Guyanese, 2020 will be an inglorious years in our history book. It will go down as when there was a barefaced attempt to hijack our democracy and disregard the will of our people. Worse yet, the attempt to rig an elections took place when the cameras were rolling and the world was witness. The dastardly attempt to erase the hard-won rights of our people is something that no right-thinking Guyanese can countenance, much less support. Yet unbelievable, we saw men and women who were held in high esteem, not only supporting, but actively defending the attempts to besmirch our democratic character. Had the wrongdoers succeeded in their nefarious plans, the development we as a country has recorded and the progress we as a people have benefited from would have disappeared in front of our very eyes. That was the path a greedy few choose to take the country and its people on to safeguard their cushy perks. Yet these very people walk around calling themselves leaders. We ask how they can deem themselves leaders when they were prepared to throw under the bus the well-being and welfare of the Guyanese people to satisfy their self-interest. The entire imbroglio exposed the several shortcomings in our elections machinery and how a compromised bunch could have hijacked an entire democracy. Indeed, we contend that those who actively conspired and participated in the attempts to deface democracy should not be anywhere near the elections machinery again. They have shown their partisan hands and cannot be trusted or expected, for that matter, to deliver credible, free and fair elections in our country. Undoubtedly, the entire episode warrants a proper and full investigation, and those culpable be made to answer for their improprieties. The entire elections imbroglio is yet another stark reminder of the fragility of our democracy and the precariousness of our rights. We should not allow anyone ever again to seek to hijack our franchise. As Guyanese, we must also play an active role to not only defend but consolidate our democracy as we seek to protect it from those who seek to tarnish it for their own interests. COVID-19, a major blow. COVID-19 has demonstrated to us how interconnected we are as a planet and how vulnerable we are as human beings. Indeed, too many have lost their battle to the dreaded virus, and many more continue to suffer. In our country, we have seen many persons being infected, though we must recognize that our rate of recovery remains high as well. While we are heartened by the reality We remain saddened by those who have lost the battle, and we send our sincerest condolences to those who have lost their loved ones. We recognize that our collective actions will go a long way in minimizing the transmission of the virus. We also must take precautions and heed the advice of the professionals. We should not leave anything to chance, as it could be harmful to our and our loved ones and well-being. We recognize too that the economic impact has been significant, and many working people have suffered tremendously. We know too of the plights of many poorer Guyanese who have had their children's education pursuit gravely affected. We recognize the proactive efforts of the new government to seek to alleviate those burdens, and have cause to wonder what really were their predecessors doing while squatting in office. It appeared that the affairs of the people took a back seat to their own self-interest, though the deadly COVID-19 was lurking. As we conclude 2020, we recognize the efforts being made to find a cure to the virus. This is welcome news in what has been a period of gloom. We are encouraged by the successes recorded, and we are hopeful that soon enough life can regain some semblance of normalcy. Conclusion: 2020 will be remembered for a long time. It is a year that will go down for many reasons, and it is a year that we will look back with fondness. We will remember the victories as we will recall the travails. We will celebrate the successes, and we take stock of the challenges. But 2020 has demonstrated once again the resilience of mankind. It has shown that in the face of adversity, we can scale the tallest mountains and climb up the deepest valleys. It causes us to be imbued to go forward stronger, committed, and optimistic that though intrigues will always be formed against us, we will wrongly defeat them. The year demonstrated the correctness of our positions and showed that despite adversities and difficulties, we can succeed to realizing our reasonable objectives. This year also reminded us of the difficulty of a jobless life and the heartbreak and sorrow it brought. Indeed, the year was momentous on several fronts, but it ends on a positive note. A past generation of workers have shown we can overcome adversities and win out if our demands and struggles are just. This is their abiding lesson to us. This enduring message we should not forget. The working people must be always vigilant, militant, organizationally strong, and united, and must always raise the banner of solidarity. As we now enter a new year, we are hopeful that the trials and tribulations we face in recent times can be erased. We are hopeful that injustices perpetuated can be righted, and we are hopeful that a better tomorrow will dawn. Finally, at this time, we take this opportunity to extend best wishes for the season to all Guyanese. May the new year bring you all joy, happiness, and prosperity. Thank you very much.